Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm doing another one of my somewhat unusual reviews. This time I'm reviewing the Bounty Hunter storyline from the MMO Star Wars The Old Republic. I finished the Bounty Hunter a little while back, but I've just been really busy with the holidays and all this other fun stuff to really sit down and do a review of the storyline for it. Now, I'm going to be talking about the storyline overall, so there are going to be some spoilers for it, but I'm going to try and keep things reasonably general so that we don't spoil any of the big surprises and the twists and the turns. I am going to talk about each of the companions that you're going to get as a bounty hunter, but I think that's pretty much 101 knowledge for most people who are going to be playing the class, who've done any reading on it at all, so I don't really consider that to be too huge of a spoiler. One thing I'm not going to do is talk about the mechanics and all that of the class, because that stuff changes all the time, so I don't really see the point of that. But anyway, let's get right into it. Now, I played a light side bounty hunter. That's actually my preferred side in this game. The one dark side character that I do have, I'm having fun with it, but you really do have to be such a cartoonish villain at times if you want the dark side points. So, I prefer to play light side, and I think this is the first time I've played all the way through a light side Imperial character, and it is actually a very interesting experience. Now, the thing with the bounty hunter is, and it's actually brought up fairly early on in your storyline by one of your companions, Mako, when she sort of asks what's the difference between us and an assassin you fought? What's the difference between being a bounty hunter and being an assassin? And you can kind of give her some BS answer, or you could just sort of say nothing really, or say I don't know, if I remember correctly. But that really is kind of ultimately what the big question is, I think, with the bounty hunter. It is ultimately, what are you loyal to? Are you ultimately loyal to just simply money, or are you ultimately loyal to your own personal sense of ethics? And if you want to be the dark side guy who only cares about money, well, that's a perfectly valid interpretation of the bounty hunter. There's many guys out in the Star Wars universe who fall under that quite clearly. Guys like Cad Bane and Aura Singh. Now, if you're going to play a light side bounty hunter, well, that's a little bit different, because here you're ultimately answerable to your own personal sense of ethics. Now, I don't know if I would say that somebody like Boba Fett would really count as a light side character in this sort of regens. If you're looking for an example in the established Star Wars universe, but to be honest, there's really no major benefit to playing neutral, which is really where I would personally put Fett. Sometimes he does good things, sometimes he does bad things, but we're not going to get into that. But what I did like, all right, let me take a step back and address, before I continue down this any further, what I have seen people level as their big criticism at the bounty hunter is, well, how can you possibly have a light side bounty hunter when you're going around and you're killing all these Republic people and you're killing Jedi and all this other stuff? And the Republic guys and the Jedi are, of course, in general, the good guys of this MMO. Excuse me. Well, okay, one thing you have to look at here is this is a game. There is no, wow, what I'm doing is morally reprehensible, I should drop this whole bounty hunter thing and go get a job at a grocery store option. Okay, that is just not in the cards. The whole thing of being light side is, when you are presented with a choice, that what do you decide to do? Again, a lot of this is really just the segregation of gameplay and storyline. As I said, you can't really just choose to not be a bounty hunter unless you decide simply not to play one. There's I'm going to go work for the Republic, all right? The people have said there's never going to be faction change in this game, and frankly, I'm glad for it. It just doesn't really make sense. But anyway, continuing on. The thing that determines really with a bounty hunter, or really any of the the classes is, what do you do when you're given a choice? Now with the bounty hunter, you can, as I've said, you can just do whatever. Money is the only thing that matters. Or you can, in certain circumstances, choose to show compassion, to show kindness, to choose to try and talk people about situations. You don't have to be this bloodthirsty psycho who only wants their money. Now, that option is certainly on the table if that's what you want to do. And if that's what you like to do, well, it's your $15 a month and your time spent in front of the computer. Play this game however you want. But that said, I do think that like I said, I do think it is just simply more interesting to play somebody like this because it creates contradictions, and contradictions within people's characters, be it in a game or a movie or a book or a TV show, is really what makes people interesting. Yeah, I mean, a simple example is in fiction, Sherlock Holmes. He's the world's most brilliant detective. On the other hand, he's absolutely really just horrible when it comes to dealing with people on an interpersonal level. He's always coming across as a jerk. He's offending people, and he has Watson around to kind of do the more well, you know what I'm saying. And if you've seen the most recent iteration with the Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman, BBC Sherlock, it's a perfect example there. So, and it is a very ambiguous situation that you're in. I mean, part of from where you start at the very beginning is you're going around and you're mostly killing people because you want to win a bounty hunting contest, and oh yeah, somebody's also giving you money, which is, if you really think about it, kind of a crappy reason to just go around and kill a complete stranger. But as I said, you do have those moments where you can choose to show mercy. Like there's a moment where you catch a guy you've been hired basically to kill, and he can beg for his life, and you can choose to spare him or not. And like I said, I do enjoy that, and I do enjoy that you can ultimately choose that it is your sense of ethics that triumphs rather than the money, which is actually pretty fitting because over the course of the bounty hunter storyline, you end up joining the Mandalorians. And this is, again, a really very strong theme with the Mandalorians. The Mandalorians, of course, are generally portrayed as a group of mercenaries and bounty hunters and guys like that. Of course, Boba Fett was a Mandalorian. Canderous Ordo, Cassius Fett, Jango Fett, so many other guys that we've seen in the Star Wars universe. Canon Doom no, it's never firmly established that Canon Doom was a Mandalorian. It was just heavily implied with her. But anyway, getting back onto this, the Mandalorians are a race of folks who very strongly believe in honor. They believe in they hold children to be very sacred. Messing with children in any way, shape, or form is absolutely verboten among Mandalorians. They believe in extreme devotion to their leader, to their clan, to their language. And for the most part, the Mandalorians stick to their word. Now, there are, of course, exceptions, and we've seen that there's been factionalism among the Mandalorians for many, many years. Quite an important subplot going on if you've been watching Star Wars: The Clone Wars. A lot of really interesting information about the Mandalorians coming to light there. In fact, I was just thinking that in some ways, the Mandalorians are awful lot like the Klingons in Star Trek. The Klingons, of course, are very big on honor. That's their thing. They're the proud warrior race guys. We've seen many stories where Klingons and their honor and their devotion to their culture and religion are very important, and that's one of the reasons why people dig the Klingons. They're a fairly interesting species. They have their contradictions as well, but the Klingons and the Mandalorians are also alike, that while they are interesting and while their sense of honor does make for a compelling case, it does give you genuine reasons to like them and to admire them, it's also heavily implied in both instances that if you're on a planet that's conquered by either of these species, it's not a good thing for you. I mean, at least with the Mandalorians, they have a tendency to recruit from the people that they conquer. The Klingons, it's never really spelled out too clearly because, one, I guess the people behind Star Trek know that the Klingons are very popular, and they don't really want to get it too heavy into the idea that this race, who is in modern times usually portrayed as at least something of an ally of the Federation, are going around conquering and enslaving other planets because, why in the world would the Federation tolerate that? But, anyway, we're getting off track here. So, again, you are, I'm just going to end up repeating myself. So let's move on and start talking about your various companions and what's going on with their storylines. Your first companion is, of course, Mako. She's your kind of hacker who kind of helps you out. Now, Mako is really one of the reasons why I was really excited to play this class. Just the information that I'd read about her and what I'd seen before this game came out made her seem like a very interesting character. She's, of course, voiced by Lacey Chabert, who is these days probably best known for doing the voice of Zatanna on the Young Justice cartoon. And she does a really great job with the character. Mako is a very fun person. She's got her own storyline that is actually quite interesting. There's a big mystery going on with Mako, and you helping her delve into that and getting to the bottom of that is really at the crux of what's going on with her, and if you decide to pursue the relationship with her, which I did. And for one thing, when you do ultimately that relationship does come to fruition, it's actually very sweet, your interactions with her. There's a couple of times she'll send you an email with a gift. My favorite part is one where she says, after the two of you have ended up getting married, that she has officially snuck into the records of both the Republican Empire and entered you as husband and wife, and that she's actually gone and vandalized the top 10 websites all across the entire galactic HoloNet with little hearts and all this other stuff. And it's just such a cute character moment, but it also feels really fitting. It feels like you and this other character have achieved a genuine and real emotional bond. And, it just really was fun, and I enjoyed learning more about her, learning about her past, helping her deal with what was going on there. So with that said, let's go on. Our next big character that I want to talk about as companions is Tori Cadera. That's voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. This is a guy who's a real veteran voice actor. He's done a million things. Probably best known as the voice of Vash the Stampede in Trigun, and the protagonist in Persona 4. And oh man, do I love me some Persona 4. Now, Torian is in fact a Mandalorian. As you talk to him, you learn a lot more about Mandalorian culture, and he even offers you, after you join the Mandalorians, to teach you the Mandalorian language, to teach you more about their culture. And he's got his own issues going on, and I don't really want to talk about what's going on with him too much because I don't want to spoil some of the really cool things. But I really did like the interactions with him. He kind of felt like a little brother in a way. But I also like that they did show that he's the character that I kept with me most of the time because he actually makes for a pretty decent tank. But I like that it's not just a pure big older brother, little brother thing. Torian is presented as somebody who does have knowledge, he has skills, he knows a lot about the Mandalorians so that he can serve as a guide for your new culture, your new clan, as it were, that you've joined once you've joined the ranks of the Mandalorians. So again, it sort of presents him as, well, maybe you are in general sort of a mentor figure to him. The two of you do operate on at least more or less a relatively even footing. And, he's just an enjoyable character. He makes a very logical and very, very useful addition to your crew. Now, moving on, we have the character Galt Renault. He's basically this big con man. He's your ranged guy. Galt's your basically there to kind of be your sort of, not exactly dark side, but he does seem to sort of lean that way a lot of the time. And so, if you want to be the more morally ambiguous and even slightly dark side or more dark side character, Galt's kind of your guy. But even then, as you sort of get to learn more about Galt and what's going on with him, he actually does present there. Basically, it is his storyline is more him showing, there's more to me than just this con man, this guy who only cares about money. I've done things in my life that I regret. I've hurt people, and ultimately, when you find out that he has a connection to somebody who's extremely important in the overall lore of the Old Republic. And honestly, I'm kind of wondering if this might not open some doors to future storylines and maybe even future companions in the expansion packs that we're going to see coming down the line. I know nothing's been said about new companions in the Rise of the Hutt Cartel, which was announced not too awful long ago. But I'm okay with that. These things do take time, and the game has literally only been out for just over a year. So yeah, something like a year and 10 days almost at the time that I'm recording this. So, oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a moment. Okay, I think that's enough said about Galt. Now let's move on to our next companion, and this is another character that I enjoyed tremendously. This is another one of the reasons I really wanted to play the Bounty Hunter, and this was getting to have Blizz the Jawa join your crew. Now, Blizz's story is ultimately, it's really fluff. The main thing about Blizz is you have this cute, hyper excited, very chipper Jawa in your crew. He thinks you're the most awesome person in the universe. And, just talking with Blizz and the way he just practically glows whenever you praise him. I mean, Blizz is just 100% pure fun. It's hard not to love Blizz. And I just had loads of fun whenever I broke Blizz out and we kind of went around kicking some butt. So really, Blizz is just 100% fun. Now, our last companion is most definitely for the Darksiders out there, and that's Sched. Now, Sched is interesting. If you go through his storyline, it basically amounts to him being one of the, if I remember it correctly, he is basically one of the guys who helped found the Black Sun, which is one of the major criminal organizations in the Star Wars galaxy. It was established. He was either one of the founders or really someone very, very big in there. And Black Sun is something that even by the time of the movies in the Star Wars timeline was still around. So, Sched is another one of those characters that I saw some people complaining about. It's like, why would I let this person on my ship? And it is true. Sched is pretty much just a straight up sociopath. He likes to hurt people. He's extremely violent. But I kind of I just kind of in a way thought of him as basically being like Jane from Fireflies. Like, he's a violent dude who you probably shouldn't trust, but on the other hand, it's better to have him on your team than have him against you. And I kind of played it like that. I even when I made the choice to, Sched kind of came to me and said, I want to join your ship. I'll kill for you. And my bounty hunter's response was basically, I've always wanted my own personal attack dog. And that's essentially how I treated Sched. And it was actually surprisingly fun to talk with him. I was a little leery of how I was going to deal with him, but ultimately, you have to really show no fear. And Sched doesn't respond well to people who try and play nice with him. You have to really sort of show him that you're willing to bop him in the face if he steps out of line. You do that, and Sched will respect you. Sched's storyline, just from talking to him, there really isn't a whole lot to it. It's mostly just him warming up to you. He does offer up some interesting lore about the founding or the early days of Black Sun, a few things about himself, And ultimately, I do like at the very end of it, if you complete his storyline, he even says to you, as far as I'm concerned, you're all right. In my book, you're honorary black son, which is a rather morally dubious honor, but it is one that is very fitting. Now, coming to back to the storyline of the bounty hunter, I do like that it is a very logical in some ways. The first part of it is your rise to power. You're starting off, you're this just young hotshot, you really don't have a whole lot going to your name. It's about establishing yourself, about showing people that you're somebody who's formidable. By the time you've basically finished your missions on Belsavis, there is no more smartass Imperials just giving you guff just because they don't, just they think they can push their weight around. By the time you finish Belsavis, you have earned the respect of the Galactic Empire, of the Sith Empire, I should say. And from then on, with very few exceptions, the Imperials and even the Sith treat you with respect, which is honestly quite satisfying. And of course, your reputation continues to grow. The Republic takes more of an interest in you. The Jedi certainly take an interest in you. And that all really leads into the big theme of the second part, which is basically, and I mean, it's even titled The Price of Fame. You've won some major battles, both personal for yourself and for the Empire, who are your primary employers. And now you sort of start having to deal with the blowback from that, which naturally leads into the third chapter, where once you get to the climax, you ultimately do have to make that big choice that I've been talking about, is what is ultimately most important to you? Is it simply money, or is it your own sense of morals and ethics? And I do like how at the end of it all, if you do make the light side choice, you can basically say to someone very important in the storyline, live in honor. And I think that is, if you're going down the light side road, ultimately what the theme of your storyline is that if you do choose the light side path, yes, you do these things that are, from a certain point of view, extremely morally reprehensible. But you're not a machine. You're not a sociopath. You're not simply in it for the money. You're someone who can use compassion, can use reason, can show kindness, can look at the greater picture, and ultimately decide to do the right thing, even in very morally questionable circumstances. You can choose to do what is best for everyone. And not just the Sith, not just for you and your crew, but for the galaxy as a whole. You can choose to do things that do make the galaxy a better place. And you know what? That really did leave me walking away from the bounty hunter storyline feeling very satisfied. Maybe I kind of was saying, what, my character, maybe he does sort of walk a thin line, but I do believe at the end of the day, he is somebody who does have a sense of ethics, who will try and do his job, his extremely ugly, nasty, violent job, but he will do so with a sense of honor, and that will be what guides him more than anything. So, folks, at the end of the day, the bounty hunter storyline is quite a bit of fun. It's not going to be for everybody, but if you just want to have that Boba Fett fantasy, as some people have called it, well, you're definitely going to be able to get that. If you want to be just somebody who's the straight up bad guy who only cares about the money, that's great. If you actually want to even go and say that you're doing this because you actually support the Empire, there are a multitude of options that make it clear that that's your stance. If you want to just be somebody who is, this is just strictly business, and you let your own sense of morality guide you, well, that's there too. So really, it is a very rich and very enjoyable storyline. So I think that it's definitely a story or a class and storyline well worth playing if you're out there playing Star Wars: The Old Republic. And with that said, folks, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.